Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning. We're excited to share some new functionality that has recently been activated in ePerformance. So we're excited that you've joined us and made some time out of your day to spend the morning with us. So before we jump into the actual information, what we're talking about, I want to just go over some basic preliminaries. So I'm Ray Justice. I'm an HCM manager here with DAS HRD Office of Talent Management. A lot of you that are ePerformance gurus in your agency are familiar with me. We've probably talked a couple times. And with me here today, I'm joined by Nancy Rector. She's my kind of right hand, so to speak, as far as configuration and any advanced troubleshooting. So Nancy, thanks for joining us today.
You're welcome. Good morning, everyone.
So just a few housekeeping items here as we get started. We do have everyone muted this morning, so just be aware that if you're trying to talk to us, we won't hear you. But feel free to use your question panel or your chat panel to send us messages or ask any questions along the way throughout the morning. We'll have plenty of time. We anticipate maybe getting done just a few minutes early. I know everyone's probably pretty sad about that, but we'll get through the content and hopefully have some time to spare. We'll stop and pause for questions all throughout, and we'll have a time for questions there at the end as well in case we missed anybody's questions. There is also a handout pane within your GoToWebinar window, so feel free to check that out. The slides for today's presentation are out there and available for download. The other couple things that are out there, number one is a related job aid, and the other one is a template or a form that we'll talk about in relation to this new functionality here in a little bit. I will also share with you that today's session is being recorded and will be available on the ePerformance toolkit, hopefully by the end of the day Friday. So if anyone wants to go back and check this information out again or view the demo later again, this is going to be uploaded to the toolkit again, hopefully before the end of the day tomorrow, Friday. Also, if any of your colleagues were hoping to be able to attend but got pulled into another meeting or UAT or anything like that, feel free to direct them to the toolkit and they'll be able to view this there. Okay. So today's agenda, let's talk about our path for the morning or for the next little bit. So we're going to talk about what this functionality is, some benefits and considerations, a couple of ideal use cases, and then Nancy's going to take us through a demonstration of the functionality here in the middle of our time. We'll also talk about some next steps, helpful hints, and again, like I mentioned, we'll have some Q&A there at the end as well. All right, so let's go into what it is. So this functionality will allow you as the ePerformance administrator in your agency to create mass batches of performance documents throughout your cycle, or at a given point in your cycle, I should say. So we're going to probably throw out the term group build, I might say group definition, something like that. But basically we're talking about the group of employees whose criteria would fall into whatever group you may choose to construct, let's say. Nancy's going to have a lot more information as our technical expert here today on that end. But basically it'll allow you, again, to do mass document creations for your supervisors. The other thing it can do is allow you to create individual documents, such as mid-probationary reviews, final probationary reviews. So if you hire in like 10 people on the same date, they'll have the same mid-probe date. You can create all 10 of those with a couple of clicks on behalf of the supervisor, okay? The job aid that you see, we've entitled it Creating Documents as an ePerformance Administrator, because you could do either or. It's not just mass, it's not just individual. It could be either or, potentially both. So with this, I do want to point out here that the raters or the supervisor's ability to create their own documents has not changed. That's not going away. This new functionality is completely optional as an alternative that might help you out in administering and kicking off your annual performance evaluation cycle. Next up, let's talk about some of the benefits of this process. Our computer is a little sluggish this morning. It hasn't had its caffeine yet, so bear with us as we advance the slide here. Well, I'll go ahead and kick off the benefits here while it's catching up. So, so one of the benefits is that it can ensure that documents are being created for the correct dates. So this would give you in HR some control over whether or not, over what dates are created. Let me get my words correct here this morning. Over what dates you use to create documents. There we go. That sounds a little bit better. The other benefit is that you can use it for large groups. Okay. Bear with me here, just catching up to show you what I want to show you slide-wise. That should look a little bit better. There we go. Now we have our benefits on screen. So you can use this for very large groups, and we'll give you some large group examples here in just a couple minutes. But as I also mentioned, you can also use it for individual documents like those mid-probes and final probes. Okay. Now, once you've, especially for the large group, once you've determined what the group looks like in your situation, the system does everything else for you. Okay, and we'll talk about what that might look like as we go throughout the demo as well. All right. There we go. All right, let's talk about some considerations to keep in mind as well. So let's say, and I know nobody on the phone would ever do this, but let's just say you accidentally input the incorrect dates into the date range field. So remember, if you're doing it for the larger group, you're creating potentially hundreds or thousands of documents at a time. So if you do 3,000 documents at your agency and the dates are wrong, that becomes a manual change on that new date change screen. Okay, so do keep that in mind. It's important to triple, quadruple check your work as you get started using this process. Now, also know that it cannot be used in conjunction with cloning. So if your agency relies heavily on the cloning functionality and your supervisors really like that and do a good job of updating their goals from year to year using cloning, just know that this document creation process available to HR will kind of work in place of that clone. Okay, so here's that term group build, and I think I've mentioned this a couple of times, but we have to have really clear definitions on what your groups look like. And we'll give you some examples as we go through. Nancy's going to give you a third example through the demo here today too. So just as you begin thinking about that, make sure you understand your groupings, such as by bargaining unit or by department ID, those kinds of things. All right, let me take you through just a couple of potential use cases. These are just a couple of tests that we've done. None of this has been used in production or in the live MyOhio environment yet. So these examples are some that we've tested behind the scenes in what we call our QA environment or our test environment. So example number one is for DAS. So we're looking at appointment type permanent, and we're looking at 6 of the 7 department IDs at DAS. The 7th department ID has a little bit of a different setup, so we've excluded that from this particular example. With the DAS example in mind, DAS has roughly 800 employees at last count, and this particular setup would mass create about 730 documents so that supervisors can then just go in and start populating their goals. Example 2 is with DRC. You can see that on your screen. We're looking at permanence here. We're looking at classified folks in a particular OCSEA bargaining unit code. And we're also looking at job code 46531, which just happens to be the correction officers. Okay. When I pulled the counts of correction officers last week, it was around 6,000 or so employees, which represents over half of their workforce. So that's a really powerful way to ensure that documents are being created in a timely manner. Like I said already, these are just examples and not necessarily exact depictions of what the final use case might end up being for you. Okay. All right, with that, I'd like to turn the keyboard over to Nancy, but before I do that, let me give you the use case that she's going to go through here today. So she's going to be looking at the accountancy board and appointment type permanent for her demo today. So Nancy, go ahead.
Thank you, Ray. We're just going to get set up in our testing environment. If you just give us 1 second, we will switch the screen over, hopefully.
The best laid plans, right? Bear with us here just a second. Sure that comes up. All right, you should be good to go, Nancy. Thank you.
All right, just give me 1 second while I log in.
So far, I haven't seen any questions come through, though. So if you have something, just shout it out on that question panel, and we'll pause here after the demo to take some questions.
Okay. As Ray said, this process will do much of the work for you when it comes to creating documents. So I'm going to run through 2 processes, one for creating an individual employee's document, and the other will be creating documents for multiple employees using the group build functionality. So as you can see, the environment I'm in is our testing environment. So our background screen color is different than production, but other than that, all of the features and the menu items would be the same. So this is the screen within HCM. So I've already logged into My Ohio, and I've launched my application under HCM. So in the first example, I'm going to be creating a probationary document for Ray. Ray volunteered to be our guinea pig today, although to be honest, he didn't really have much of a choice because I kind of voluntold him. So we're going to be creating a document for Ray. So the first thing that you would be doing would be to starting out at main menu, and you would be navigating to kind of a familiar path, I would think, for most of you. You'd be doing workforce development, performance management, performance documents, and then there's a new path here called create documents. So we will click on that. And this takes you to a screen called create documents, and it's going to ask you to input a run control ID. And a run control ID is kind of just a unique way for the system to identify who's running a process. So creating these documents actually runs a behind-the-scenes process. So you will identify yourself as the person that's running that process. And you want to make sure that you use an ID that is something that you'll remember, that's going to kind of link that ID to the document that you're creating. So my advice would be to create a spreadsheet of all the documents that you want to create, and then make sure that you indicate on that spreadsheet, have a column for your run control ID. So you'll need that later in the process. So the first thing that we're going to do, since this is a brand new time that we're doing this, we're going to enter, we're going to add a new value. So in here, I'm going to use my run control ID. I usually do my initials, kind of an easy way to remember. Since I'm going to be creating a probationary document, I'm going to type TROB, and then I'm going to do our date today. A good way to remember it. So then we're going to say add. And this takes you now to the Create Documents page. So at the top, you will see that there is a section called Run Request Parameters. And these parameters are what is being used to create the job. So we have some familiar fields. We have a period begin, period end date. We have a document type, a template ID, and then a manager selection method. And the manager selection method is how the system will determine who the employee supervisor is. So we use the reports to structure in HCM for that. So I will show you how we will enter all of these. So we're going to create a probationary document for Ray using our beginning of April. We'll start it. And then our end date will be the end of March 2019. And so we're going to select our document type, which is a probationary review, our template ID, which is probation, and then our selection, our manager selection. We are always going to use this particular option, which is the by reports to position. That's how HCM will determine who the employee supervisor is. So the next section you'll come to is the section called Create Documents Using. So like we had said before, there's two ways you can use this. You can either create a document for an individual employee, or you can use the group ID functionality. So in this case, we're just going to create it for an individual employee. So I'm going to select the Employee ID radio button. And then I'm going to go down to the Employee ID field, and I'm going to type in the employee's ID. And then just tab over, and it will show you the employee's name. Now, if you wanted to create maybe 3 or 4 documents for employees, you can do it. You can use this method as well. You just need to know their employee ID, and then you would just hit that plus button over here to add a new row, and you can continue to create documents importing employee IDs. Just remember that all the documents that you create will utilize the same run request parameters. They'll all be created for the same date range. They'll be the same type of document type and template. So after we have gotten our employee information, we're going to hit the Run button. And this takes us to a page called the Process Scheduler page. And this page is just basically letting you know that the process is scheduled. This is the name of the process. It's called ePMGR doc. And then it's just letting you know the date and time that we've scheduled the process. So we're going to hit OK. And then it kind of takes you back to the Create Document screen. And you'll move to the Process Monitor link. And this link just shows you what process is running. And it just kind of gives you a sort of a real-time perspective of how long the process is taking and where it is in the status. So right now the process is queued. So we will go in and refresh this screen. And look, it's already said it's success. So what you would do in all cases is you would refresh, and you can continue to hit the refresh button every few seconds to see where it is in the process. We'll hit it again to make sure that our run status says success and our distribution status says posted. So we'll just give it a couple more seconds. There it goes. Okay, so it's letting you know that the job is completed, it's finished running. So now you'll want to check to see that your document did indeed get created. So we will go back up to our breadcrumbs up here, and we will continue our same path. We'll go to Main Menu, Workforce Development, Performance Management, and we'll click down here, and there's a new screen called View Document Creation Results. So we will click on that. And remember, I told you that we will need to remember our run control ID, and this is kind of why you need to remember this, because it's going to ask you to enter that in again. So we'll do that. Yeah. 0320. Okay. And then we will hit search, and this screen will come up, and this is showing you, this is the view document creation results screen. And up at the top, you'll see that our run request parameters are there. This is when we decided to have the job, period begin and end date, and the type of document. And then down at the bottom, it's letting you know that these documents were created successfully. So we have our employee ID, the type of the template, we have our supervisor name and ID, and then whether the document was created successfully, and just letting you know that document was created successfully. So you can also check in as an ePerformance administrator to see if your documents were created using this kind of the same path that you are pretty familiar with at this point, I would guess, being in that role. You would go to Performance Management, Performance Docs, and then View Docs. So we will type in our employee's name, first and last, and then our document type is probationary review. I believe we should probably get a search under that. Huh? Oh. You have to spell it right for it to work. Sorry. Here we go. Okay. So the document that we created just recently is right out there on top. So we'll click on that. And you can see that it is in an in-progress status, and it's ready for Ray's supervisor to begin adding additional criteria. So I am going to actually show you how, for Ray's supervisor, I'm going to log into as Ray's supervisor and kind of give you just an idea of what it would look like for them. So let me sign out here really quickly, and then I will sign back in. Does anybody have any questions so far? I don't think we've seen any pop up, but quick, so just take a second. So we were now logged in as Ray's supervisor, and normally this person would be going through My Ohio and kind of probably accessing the menu items there. But we're going to take a quick shortcut and go to Manage Your Self-Service, Performance Management, Performance Documents, and this would be under Current Documents because it's already been created. And you can see it's right there at the top. So we will click on that. And you can see that the next action has the Start link. So she is ready to go ahead and access that document, which we'll do. We'll expand all. And you can see that what's really nice about this process is you can see that DAS has a purpose of organization built in, and they also have some agency competencies that pre-populate for their department profile. So those will automatically come in, and we also have our classification competencies that already come in. So really all that's left for her to do would be to add goals. So, or if she needs to add an additional competency, she's more than able to do that as well. So it's kind of nice. It already creates sort of the shell for you, for your managers, and they can go in and just add goals for the upcoming year. So, okay. So we were going to now take you and we will go into creating documents for the larger group. So I'm going to sign out really quickly, get myself back in here.
Just going to check real quick to make sure no questions have arrived. I don't see any, so hopefully everyone's still awake out there. I'm just saying. So Nancy, if you would go ahead and continue, that'd be fantastic. Thank you.
I will. Okay, so we're going to kind of follow the same path we followed before. I'm just going to go to workforce development, performance management, performance docs, and we're going to create documents again. And because we used a run control ID that was kind of specific to the probationary documents that we were creating for Ray, I'm going to add a new run control ID for these. So you can add as many as you need. You don't have to worry about having too many out there. Just make sure you keep track of them so that you'll be able to access those documents at a later point. So I'm going to actually use Ray's initials this time. And since I'm creating documents for the accountancy board, I'm going to use their 3-character department. And we're also going to be creating documents for only their permanent employees. So I kind of have a little bit of a description on there to kind of let me know what I'm creating the documents for. Now the accountancy board is not a large board, so normally this use case may not be the best for this type of creation process because they really don't have too many employees. But we didn't want the runtime to take too long for our webinar. We are under some time constraints, so we didn't want to bore you with the system processing large amounts of documents. So we're going to kind of stick with a small group just for this demonstration. So we're going to hit the Add button. And once again, we're taken to the Create Document screen. So we are going to use the same period end dates that we did last for Ray's. Let's go with a April 1st date and then a March 31st date. And this time we're going to create annual reviews for these employees. So normally I would venture to guess that most agencies would use an annual review, would use this process for annual reviews. You wouldn't be mass creating ad hocs and I don't imagine too many mass creations of probationary reviews. So this would probably be the most likely scenario. So once again, we're going to use the reports to position. And then in this case, we're going to leave the radio button selected for group ID. And then down here, we are going to go into the group ID button and hit our lookup. Now, this will populate with groups that you have been assigned permission to see. So I have a few out here because I've been doing some testing on this process. So I'm going to select the ACC one. But the groups will be built. I think we talked earlier in the webinar about how we would come up with criteria for groups. And a group is basically just the population of employees that we're going to be running this process for. So we will work with you and come up with the criteria that we'll use for creating these groups. And we'll have them ahead of time, and we'll test to make sure that our populations match and we are creating documents for the right group of people. And then someone from your agency, one of you or perhaps another person in your office, will be assigned that group to use. So you will only see the groups that you are assigned to, and they are assigned by employee ID. So it's pretty specific on who can see the groups and who can't. So you won't have anybody kind of going in there randomly and being able to create these documents. It's kind of a safe measure. So once we've selected that group, then we are going to hit our Run button. And once again, we're taken to our process scheduler. So we're going to hit OK. And our process monitor. And it's letting me know that our latest job has been queued. So we will hit refresh here in just a second.
Nancy, while we're waiting for that to finish, it looks like we have a question there.
Okay.
Check that out. Okay. Is there a way to search your list run control IDs if you forget what you've created?
Yes. I'm pretty sure, and I've done this a few times, if you have forgotten your run control ID and you just hit search, it'll pull a drop down of those that you have used in the past. So like I said before, it's a good idea to have them relatively descriptive so you can select the one that you that applies to what you're working on right now. But yes.
Thank you for that question. Nancy, one more while we're paused here for a second. So for larger agencies, how long do you anticipate this job would run for a larger group of employees?
Well, it really depends on how large the group is, because it in turn then impacts how many documents are created. So the system is, very rapidly creating documents, linking them to the employee's supervisor, pulling in the department and the job profiles. So it can take a little bit longer. In testing, most of the time it took within, I would say maybe a half an hour. Then that's for larger groups. But we did test our correction officers, which were our largest population. And that did take a few hours. But that's okay, because you don't have to stay at your desk and continue hitting the refresh button that entire time. We have built into our job aid instructions on how to access this process monitor from just, without going through the actual process of creating documents. You can access it separately. So you can log out of My Ohio, go to a meeting, go to lunch, come back and check on your progress. So it doesn't tie you to your desk. So we will check our progress here. Should hopefully be. Yeah, so we've had success and the distribution status is posted. So we will now take a peek and see what documents were created. So we'll go to our workforce development, performance management, view document creation results, and I'm going to enter my run control ID. It's RJ. And then we'll search. And this screen, I'm going to scroll down just a little bit. At the top, you can see that we have our run request parameters there, what we entered in, and we're using our group ID for creation. And you can see we have a list of documents that were created. Now, as I said earlier, the accountancy board has about 9 permanent staff members. So this process was only created for those. So we have 9 documents created successfully. So that is good news. One way that you can also take a peek, or actually the way that will help you, I think, keep track of documents and potentially help this process as well, is there is a little icon up here where you can actually download these results into an Excel file, which I will do. It's going to open up there. Oh, there it is. Let me open that up. And we're going to say yes, and there we go. So this kind of creates a nice spreadsheet for you to help you keep track. So I think that's a nice feature, especially if you have a larger group. I think that'd be very helpful. So, all right, let me get back to our documents. Okay. So, does anyone have any questions?
Nancy, while they're thinking of their questions, I'm sure there are going to be a few. No pressure, anybody. So after an agency submits their group definition form, how long might it take before they can actually start this run process?
Well, we would like to obviously work with the agency to make sure that we are capturing the correct population. And I would anticipate probably about 2 weeks. And that would include us collaborating and clarifying and any testing that we need to do. So not too long of a period of time, but we do want to make sure that we're gathering the right group and we have proper testing done.
Great, thank you. One other one here. So if we use this feature, tell me about, or if an agency uses this feature, tell them about any notifications that they might expect.
Well, if you're using this feature, you will still, we will still have the 30, 60 days notifications running. So this is when you would really need to communicate with your supervisors and managers with your agency, just letting them know that we're going to be trying this process this year, and your documents will be created for you. You may still receive a notification, and that's okay. It's actually a good way for them to go in then and check to make sure the document's there and if they needed to add any additional criteria. So the notifications will still be sent, and it's just a good way to double check that.
Great. So there was a similar question asked from an attendee. So there are no notifications that automatically send once a document is created. So once the document is being worked through, once goals are being entered, that save action will trigger a notification back. But that immediate creation process, that act of creation, does not trigger a notification out to anybody. Okay. And then another question from online, what if a supervisor has already created an evaluation with the same dates?
That is an excellent question. The system will actually provide you an error message on that employee's line when we were looking at that view creation document results page. Under that employee, it will let you know that the document was not created because there was another document already out there in the system matching that those parameters, those date parameters and the document type and template.
Great, thank you. So when can folks begin using this process, Nancy?
Well, we are about a week away from our April cycle start date, so that probably would not work for us, but we can certainly look at July. And actually, people can start using the process today if you're creating a document for an individual employee. That doesn't require any group build. It doesn't require any additional effort to organize anything. You can certainly go in and create documents for individual employees today. But when we're talking about the mass creation process, we would probably be looking at our next cycle date, which I believe is July.
Thank you. I wanted to take a second and show you, I meant to bring this up at an earlier point and failed to do so, but I want to take a second and show you the form that is available in your handouts panel as well as on the ePerformance toolkit. So the form that you see on your screen here is what you would need to submit to the ePerformance inbox, and I'll give you our contact information here at the end. To kind of kick off this discussion, and we do anticipate a discussion around this, not necessarily you're submitting a form and we're completing a form, you know what I mean? So we'll need some key pieces of information. This happens to be a PDF. You can type in it and send it over to us to get started. There are a few things that we feel like we really need to have right up front, such as the period dates, the document type, the template that you would select, and then at least your agency, your 3-character agency code. And then from there, it's really kind of delineating how small you want to make your groups or how large you anticipate your groups being. So this is a start on our form. Again, this is available to you through your handout pane as well as on the ePerformance toolkit. Once we receive this, we'll be in contact to clarify any of your information, to ask you a few questions, and then before we deploy this to you, we will also be doing some testing behind the scenes just to make sure that the results are as we expect them to be throughout that creation process. Okay. Let me pause one more time. No new questions have come in, so let me flip the screen back and round out our PowerPoint here with a few helpful hints. There we go. So as you go through and begin trying out this process, as Nancy mentioned, the communication can't be emphasized enough. So just like when the rater creates a document, like we said, this mass creation doesn't send notifications out to the employees, nor does it notify your supervisors that a document has been created on their behalf. So definitely take some time, think through your communication strategy to your folks. What would that look like? What information would help them the most, so on and so forth. Also, be sure to let them know when they can begin entering their goals, when they can start working on the document, or when they can expect to see those documents land in their current documents list. Also, as Nancy has pointed out and demonstrated for us, the department and job profiles definitely still apply, just like always. So I think that's really helpful to know as well. We also feel like it would be a great idea, especially for those of you in larger agencies, to determine a central point of contact to utilize this functionality. So rather than having each location or district or institution or hospital, whatever the case may be, kind of do this on their own, it would probably be a great idea to funnel those through one central point of contact, maybe in central office or whatever the case may be, so that there's one person that's responsible to gather all of this up, supply us with the group information, and then kick off that group build or the run process. And if you have questions and need help working out who that might be, just give us a call. We can help you through any of those questions that you might have along the way. I do see another questions come in, so let's take a look here. So one of the questions that have come up online is, if we give you goals, can they be included in the mass production? I would say that 99% of the time the answer to that question would be no. The only time that that really would be available is if your agency is the only agency that happens to use a particular job code or classification. In that instance, we can work together and explore that possibility. But generally speaking, most of the job codes are used across the enterprise, across the state. And those goals will be loaded based upon the job code. Okay, so that's kind of a difficult issue to work through. But again, if you have instances where you're the only agency that utilizes a particular job code, let's chat a little bit more. But again, most of the time, no, we can't preload goals. So another question, when creating mass documents, will ePerformance recognize employees on probation within the group? That's a great question.
That is a great question. Thank you, Janet. So yes, we will build into the group build. The group build is actually based on a query that is created in HCM. So we will be querying for these employees. And built into that query, we have criteria set around to exclude those employees that are on probation.
Thank you. For those of you that don't know what a query is, basically you can think of a query as kind of a report.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. Let me take one last pause for final questions. I don't see anything in the last few minutes. Hopefully you've gotten some good information out of our session today and can begin thinking about how you might want to utilize this functionality. Again, any questions that you have, please don't hesitate to reach out. Let me put my contact information up here. Oh, next steps. I missed a slide. See the best slide plans. There we go. Next steps. Definitely download the job aid. Take a look through that. Pretty much everything that Nancy talked you through in the demo is in the job aid, including the steps to get back to that process monitor screen if you have to log out and come back in. Check out that group parameters template, that basic table that I showed you a few minutes ago, to help you begin thinking how you might be building your groups. I didn't say this before, but a good way to think of those groups is how we outlined your cycle dates back when we implemented the auto-populating of the cycle dates in job data. So behind the scenes, we have a screen to update those, and it looks at things such as union codes, such as classified, unclassified, appointment types, those kinds of things. So kind of think of that, of this group similar to how you would think of your cycle day groups. And then, of course, I think I've said this a million times, but contact us with questions. Here is our contact information, so check that out. Oh, there we go. So the ePerformance inbox is a great resource. If I can't help you, Nancy, I will get with Nancy and we can figure it out, I'm sure. My office phone number is listed there too, and the ePerformance Toolkit link is there on screen for you as well. With that, we thank you for your time today and attention. And again, if you have any issues, any questions, concerns, give us a call and we'd be happy to help you out. We hope everyone has a great day, and thank you, Nancy, for being with me today.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Have a great day.